welcome to the Matter Leadership Podcast. I'm Dan.
And I'm Travis, and we believe that leadership really matters. And this podcast is meant to inspire the next generation of leaders and to be a resource for people who are currently in positions of leadership.
Today's guests are Chuck and Ashley Eilliot. Chuck and Ashley are relationship specialists. Say that with me, Travis.
Yeah, relationship specialists. We got it.
Yeah, we nailed it. Who help people build thriving personal and professional relationships. Together, they are certified in 8 different psycho-educational programs aimed toward building relational success. Chuck is also a pastor and Ashley a professor, overseeing the psychology and addictions counseling program at her university.
Hey, you did a great job with pronouncing all those words.
It was like a test. I appreciate that. I think I passed.
Well, Chuck and Ashley love to speak about the topic of relationships, grief, love, and doing hard things. And we loved getting to hear them speak about all that and more. So let's get to the interview.
All right, welcome, Chuck and Ashley. We are so excited to have you on the podcast. Thanks for taking time out of your day.
Yeah, excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
This is actually the first time we've had 2 guests on. I don't know what I think you get an award or something.
Yay! This is the first time you've had 2 people that have been a guest on the show at the same time. Like, what?
Exactly.
We feel special.
We like the power dynamic of 2 hosts and 1 guest, so I don't know how we'll do with the balance of power.
You know what? You're used to outnumbering people, but now it's turned. It's okay. It's even.
Okay. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. But really, though, it's 2 guests, 1 screen. So I still think we hold the power dynamic on our end. So
You might be right.
It's good. I like that.
Well, we would love to just kind of start with hearing about what you both do. You're a husband and wife team. We know you do coaching. We know you have just like, so we were on your website and we've talked to you in the past, and we just know you have your, I was going to say hands in a bunch of different pots, but I don't know how the phrase goes.
You're actually not allowed to put hands in pots right now because of COVID. So.
Good point. A ladle, your gloved ladles are in many pots.
I think that probably does describe it pretty well, because we do a lot of things, and the way you described it, it sounds messy, and I guess sometimes it can be messy because we do a lot of things.
I mentioned gloves, so why don't you talk a little bit about just specifically what you do in regard to coaching and just as far as like vocationally what you both do and then what you do together.
Well, both of us have full-time jobs. So I'm a professor at a university and he's a pastor, but we wanted to do ministry together. We knew since we first met, that was our first conversation. We had like-minded ideas and wanted to help people and help relationships, help people draw closer to God. And so we've been in the last year or so been doing that through our ministry business on the side. And, we create videos and we do a little bit of coaching, and we've definitely focused on relationships, helping people in their professional, personal relationships, and also growing closer to God through that. Mm-hmm.
So both Ashley and I have a background in counseling. So we've been marriage educators, did that for about 10 years. I was a counselor before I was on staff at a church, working with teens involved with probation services, things like that, juveniles that are in the system with the state for neglect and abuse. So that was my world a little bit before that. Ashley had also done private practice. So all of our experience is kind of built into us being able to do coaching and to work together. Through that, we've been able to create a couple online courses. Mm-hmm. License those a couple places. So yes, we love doing a lot of things.
That's amazing. Oh, wow. I like how you threw that in, but that's your life right there.
Yeah.
That's so much time.
We have 3 boys, 11, 8, and 2 years old.
Amazing. As far as coaching goes, if someone comes to you or if a couple comes to you, what does that look like just in terms of the coaching itself? Is that, I know with COVID, things look a lot different right now, but like, are these multiple sessions? Is it, hey, we want you to watch these videos and then we're going to do some counseling after that? What does it look like just on a practical level?
And can I throw in too, because you used the word, you knew you wanted to do ministry together. So would you say like coaching is equal to ministry? Like you kind of see that as the same thing, and what does that look like? Especially for people if they're listening and they're not sure what they mean by like doing ministry together.
Oh, no, that's a great clarifier. We have a heart to help people, and it comes out of our heart, our love for God, that we believe that we've been given gifts and we don't want to just sit on them. We want to help people in any way that we can. So we want to be able to work with people and help them in the relationships the best way that we can. And we get to do that together.
Yeah. And we see that just so many people are divorced, they're broke, they're lonely, they're struggling mentally, and even at work it can be difficult. So we want to see people be better. And sometimes we're really sharing our faith, and other times it's just focused on the relationships. And either way, we feel like we are helping people, and doing that together is definitely something that we're passionate about.
So you asked the question, what does it look like for somebody to work with us? It depends on what the situation is. We have some clients that we work with just for a couple sessions. If it's getting over something, say if it's a grief specific thing that they need help processing. A lot of times with grief, people want to know, am I okay? Am I dealing with this in the right way? And they kind of just need a checkup. We also have couples. I have couples that I've worked with for months, getting close to a year with some of those people. Students that I've worked with for up to a couple years through different relationships. So it depends on what's going on. It can be something that's short and targeted, or something a little bit more long-term. It depends on if the person's goals are short-term or if they're long-term goals.
Yeah, but we offer all of it online, so that's definitely an option. We do some, face-to-face in the Southern Indiana area, but we mostly, are offering our online coaching, which is great for the state of the world. You have consistency, at least if you know that you could do it in the privacy of your home. And we sometimes will use, you kind of pointed out the video side of things. We sometimes use those in conjunction. And so ideally, if someone, is looking at our love and loss program for grief, then we will ask them to go through that, and we'll talk through it, whether they want to do it completely before or kind of ongoing. But because it's, it's us having spent years of, processing, working with people, and then putting this, into a program that they can do on their own, in their pajamas, when they have time, and
watch it on their cell phone.
They can cry without being seen, and kind of work through it. And then we can go into some of the deeper things, through our sessions.
Yeah, through processing it.
I'd love to hear some of the background that sort of steered you guys in that direction, because Ashley, you mentioned at the start, like even when you and Chuck first met, it sounds like you knew you wanted to do ministry. Maybe that was something you wanted to do separately. And then as you guys started dating, like this idea of we want to be about helping people, what kind of steered your life in that direction? Because clearly you've got some degrees behind that desire, so you have the skill set in helping people, but what was sort of the first impetus to drive you in that direction?
So, to back it all the way up, Ashley had a list. She had a full-on book of questions that she asked me before she would really get serious about dating me, before we got married. So she wanted to know, is it going to be an option for us to work together? What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? And it was really in depth. So I feel like from the beginning of our relationship, it set things up to move in that direction. Not that she was controlling it, but we knew that we had the same desires.
Yeah.
And like I said before, we had a passion for healthy relationships, even in the beginning of our relationship. So we've been married just about a year, and we found a local organization called Community Marriage Builders, and we signed up with them to be marriage educators. So we started teaching marriage workshops. They trained us, and we got certified in different curriculums and went through and did that. So it's always been something that we've developed. At our church, we've had the opportunity to team teach together and teach classes, give sermons, do things along those lines. And then coming more closely to current day, we've just found, okay, what if we could create something together? What does it look like for us to, instead of working for other people doing this, what's it look like for us to say, God's put this on our heart. How do we start it? How do we grow it?
Yeah. And one of the things that we personally went through as a couple that kind of moved us toward choosing grief is one of the first things that we developed together is we had 2 boys, and then we had miscarriages in 2015, 16, and 17. And in 2018, we were blessed with Emerson after I did lots and lots of shots. We went to specialists in other cities, and I did tons of research on the academic journal articles, trying to figure out, what could be done. And we really didn't want our grief to end with us. We wanted to help others so that they can, get better, but then we also want them to help others. And so you said something, I really hadn't thought about it until just now, but me asking those questions.
Yeah.
I wrote down in my loneliness and my singleness when I was single and sad and crying in my room sometimes, and all my friends were getting married. I'm like, what are those questions that I would want to ask? And I feel like that's maybe something that just God's put in me, that even on hard days, I don't want it to end there. And that's something that I even thought about earlier today when I was talking to someone who's getting married. Like, I want to send them those questions, because I've known a lot of people who have, read them, and it's helped their relationships. And so we feel like a lot of the struggles that we've gone through, we see other people having similar situations. So we want to just help people who are struggling with normal situations and, the very out of the ordinary situations, to heal. And then our hope is for them not to just heal, but to help other people heal. And that's how we see legacy leavers, people who leave a legacy and be world changers, like the exponential growth.
That makes a lot of sense. One of the things, so Travis and I both work with high school students. We work in public high school, and I'm going to be honest, I feel like for a lot of our audience, like our high school students listening, they're going to be like, marriage, A, that seems so far away, and B, like, I don't ever want to get married. So I guess my question is, why do you think, or why is marriage so important to you in terms of your work? And also, what would be, not necessarily your advice, but what would you say to a high school kid who's listening, who marriage might not even be on their mind, but obviously relationships are important. So what would you say to someone who isn't necessarily even thinking about marriage yet, in terms of like what they can do to have healthy relationships, or to prepare themselves for maybe not necessarily even being married, but to just be in a healthy relationship with someone? And then that second part being like, why is marriage such an important focal point for your work?
Yeah, and I work with high school students as well. I'm a high school pastor at the church that I'm at. So I'm talking to and working with high school students all the time. And it all has to do with relationships. So even if you feel like, I'm not getting married anytime soon, and I don't want to get married because maybe you haven't seen great examples of marriage, or it seems like it's something that is not desirable, healthy relationships are still desirable. Mm-hmm. So I tell my students that you're practicing relationships all the time. Whether or not you're a good friend, whether or not you're a good boyfriend, a good girlfriend, or whatever employee. It is, employee, yeah. Practicing those relationships and communicating well. And you know what? Just dealing with your mess. When you have conflict, learning how to talk about it. That kind of stuff, those kind of skills are what's going to help you regardless of what your marital situation looks like later. So I'm always an advocate of people improving their emotional intelligence. How do I recognize what's going on inside of me? How do I recognize things inside of other people? And through that, how do I improve a relationship? So absolutely. And then for marriage, marriage is a lifelong commitment, and it's something that doesn't have to be, that's the only goal. It doesn't mean I'm going to be happy. I'm not going to be happy unless I get married, but it's an amazing experience to be able to be married. Mm-hmm. And I know that I've learned a lot from it.
Yeah. And even if people are less interested in getting married, because that is what the data is showing, that fewer and fewer people are getting married. And some have even said that there's some results that divorce rate has gone down a little bit in some places because people are getting married less. Yeah. But people who cohabitate, they end up, those great relationships break up more frequently. And so we do believe in marriage as a good thing, even if they're, not focused on it. But, that's something that we talk with students sometimes, that building the relationships, whether it's just with girl to girl, guy to guy friendships, whatever, having those skills and using them well will help in whatever form, whether it's at work or in a marriage or those types of things.
And I think realizing that you don't have to figure it out alone, having other people around you and listening to adults or maybe young adults who are just a couple stages past you, and have them be able to have an avenue to speak into your life and give you wisdom, because they'll recognize things that don't look healthy. I speak to students on a regular basis who have been in abusive relationships, mm-hmm. who have been in toxic relationships, and man, they really need to let people in. And sometimes they don't want to listen in the beginning stage of a relationship if someone sees that it's unhealthy, mm-hmm. but it is really important to feel like you're not doing it alone, and it's okay that your relationships aren't perfect, but that doesn't mean that you don't deal with them.
Yeah, so important. And so important to have people that are, just journeying with you through hard things. And especially during this time, it can feel really isolating and lonely. And how do we foster and build those really important relational skills to continue to engage in community and have people rally around us? I know you have some recent curriculum that's out. I think it's called Do Hard Things. Is that Is that what it's called?
Yeah,
It would
Right?
have been really awkward if you said, no, I think you're thinking of someone else. And then Trav would have just hung up the Zoom and blamed the internet connection or something.
Yeah. Yeah. But I would love to hear you talk about that curriculum. I would love to hear you talk about, I appreciate you guys just shared some, with some vulnerability already of some of the hardships that you've experienced, but really that challenge to get people to step in and do hard things, that can be a hard sell. Like, hey, that's not, if you're thinking of like, how do we market to people? I know, let's tell them to do hard things. Like that's probably not going to land. But why is that so important? And how do you create that buy-in? And I'd love to hear a little bit about that curriculum.
Well, it is our free program. So anybody who's interested, they can check it out at our website. And we would love, to have people go through it. But it's a self-paced program. And we've, talked a little bit about our experiences, but we want to help people do whatever the hard thing is. And so we kind of talk through some steps that people can follow, whether it is, making a New Year's resolution that could be coming up, or if it is, anything that's like with their relationship, if they want to get better in their job, but they can do hard things and it's worth it. So a lot of us, like, we want to be strong. We want to have that, we have the fairy tale dreams, we want to make $1 million. We want to do things, but we don't want to like get up at 5 a.m. to do it. And so sometimes, we kind of walk through the steps, and kind of break it down in practical terms. What are you doing today? And, to kind of lead toward those hard things.
And a lot of it has to just do with the practical nature of it. Before Ashley and I started doing this business, this ministry together, we researched it. We didn't know everything. We had to figure out, man, what is the mic that we're going to talk into if we do this? What does our lights need to look like? How do we do this? How do we set up a website? How do we do those things? You have to research it. Go have coffee with somebody who's done something that you'd like to do. You have to take those steps. Because you could say, I would have liked to have done this. I would have liked to have done this. Well, meet some people, do some research, put the time in to figure out what does it look like to get from where you are to where you want to be. And I think a lot of it with doing hard things is it seems like our culture has not helped us in our patience area because we think things have to happen quick. So if you want to do something hard and you've had a horrible relationship with your whoever, boss, husband, wife, or had a horrible eating habit for 5 years, it's not going to get fixed in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You have to be patient with the process of getting better at something. And it's almost saying, hey guys, you're doing hard things. It's okay that it's hard. It's okay that it's uncomfortable. And a lot of times we just need a coach or somebody encouraging us along the way to say, yeah, it sucks right now.
Yeah.
You don't want to get up early. You don't want to do extra push-ups. You don't want to have that conversation and talk to somebody after they hurt your feelings because it makes you feel weak when you already feel weak. Those are the hard things where you get over to the next step to actually make you stronger.
Yeah. It's like whenever someone's crying or sad, we might want to be like, oh, I'm sorry, or it's okay. We want to get them to stop crying.
Because that feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. But we want to tell people, like, we're proud of you. Like, you're doing hard work. You're going there. Because sometimes we're tempted to just try to get everything back to an equilibrium and feel like we're okay. And it actually takes more work but it's more rewarding to allow yourself to go there emotionally and say, I'm going to face this goal or make this goal and then, do the work to reach it.
So yeah, in that course, we give people homework along every step of the way and say, this is what you need to do. You need to research this. You need to have these conversations. You need to have this done. You need to set up your timeline. What are your short-term goals? What are your long-term goals? What does it look like to get from here to there?
I think if you were to make a 2-word summary of 2020, I think hard things might be that summary. So well branded on that front. I wanted to ask a question about the idea of just coping and managing grief, managing pain. I started this with a joke about 2020, but for many people, actually, I would argue everyone in some way has been impacted by the events of this year, and obviously with COVID and the political and racial strife, there's just so much happening, and going even into the holiday season, which for a lot of people is already just a difficult time of year with family. I feel like that weight is compounded this year with just the pandemic and everything. And I mentioned it to you prior to the call, but at my school it was in the past couple of weeks, we had a student commit suicide, and we're remote, and it's been so challenging that there's no, I've been talking to my students about it, and there's no, death in general, we're not wired really to understand death, let alone death when it comes unexpectedly and tragically like this. And there isn't necessarily I think, I know I'm wired to just want to have a solution. Like you mentioned earlier that these hard things take time. And I think one of the questions I guess I have is, what is your advice to people in terms of coping and managing pain, managing and dealing with tragedy, dealing with just all the stress of this year, not just for teens and students, but just for people in general? What are some of your strategies or just coping mechanisms that you have found to be beneficial when put into practice over a period of time?
One of the things that we have talked about with people is how we kind of resist our negative emotions as a culture, and so it's like we dive into Netflix or we just escape in whatever
Bury
way.
into our phone.
Yeah, but allowing ourselves to process and say, what is the negative emotion that I'm experiencing, and not just trying to push it away. Yeah, or mask it. And that's, certainly with suicide, it's something, we tend to grieve, and then we say, what if I could have done something, and it's my fault, or I couldn't do anything now. Just have a lot of just ambiguous thoughts that you kind of feel like you can't fix, and
you don't know what to do with them. It just kind of adds into your anxiety,
and it can make us more likely to want to push them down or distract from them. But definitely creating space to process those emotions. And so we're really good compartmentalizers and terrible at compartmentalizing, right? We can barrel through our day and someone says, how are you? Good. You, right? And you walk on by, but we don't really give ourselves time to actually process how we're feeling sometimes. And so for situations like when someone has committed suicide, giving time for people to just get in a room together and talk, whether that's a virtual room or, over coffee or with their family, but just guiding people to say, let's just create space to ask that question. So we've got 3 A's that we've used for different things, but it's first we become aware. You become aware of your own thoughts and feelings, and then you try, you can go through the 3 A's then with others as well. And so then you assess, how do I feel? What am I, how am I processing? What's going well?
Yeah.
And then we act. And so you're what else do I need to do? And so then we can kind of do the same thing, watch and see in others. So if there's been a suicide, and actually a good question that comes from the negative emotion is, could have I done something? And so we can't go back in these situations, but we can be aware of what's going on around us.
Our current relationships,
be aware. Is there anything that's different within anyone in the class? Have I noticed they aren't showing up, or they're dressing differently, or they're less engaged? And then ask a question, and so you're assessing, what can I do about it? And then the acting would be, be asking a question like, how are you today? Because we've all heard those stories, hundreds of stories where someone said, this person intervened, I was going to go home and end my life today. But that one person, and so we want to be that person. But that takes us being willing to do hard things, to say, I'm running late, but I'm going to go ahead and ask this question. Or it's uncomfortable, but I'm going to go ahead and ask a question.
And something with coping, you said that a little bit ago, and thinking about how do we do that. Coping is not just finding something that distracts you from what hurts. Sometimes people think I'm coping because I'm avoiding it, or I'm just going out with my friends and ignoring the problem, or ignoring something that hurts. Allowing yourself to go there. If you are walking down the hallway at school and you pass the person's locker who's no longer with you, it's okay to be upset. It's okay to stop, to cry, to feel that. And also, if you walk past it a couple months later and you don't feel sad anymore, you don't have to feel guilty that you don't feel sad right now.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself to feel whatever you need to feel in that moment, and giving yourself permission to do it, because in the grand scheme of things, if we don't allow ourselves to go there when we need to and grieve in a healthy way, and to just feel sad when we need to, be angry when you need to be angry about it, it turns up in other areas of our life later.
Yeah.
So if you have a grief, you have something that's serious that happens. If you're a high school student and one of your friends takes their own life and you're grieving that, if you push that down, the next time that some type of conflict happens in your life, you might, out of the ordinary, blow up on it. Or the next time something happens that you're worried about somebody leaving you in a relationship, you might be really, really upset about it and not completely understand why. So there's a value to going there and feeling it now, because if you don't now, it will often come up in another way later. It doesn't make you weak to deal with it now and to cry now and to talk about it now. It actually means that you're strong to be able to face it.
Yeah, and you use the example of feeling angry, and like we talked about these negative emotions, like listening to what's behind our anger, like what's beneath it. Like, I feel angry because I feel out of control, or because I feel lonely, or I feel guilty.
Mm-hmm.
There's all kinds of emotions that are really behind anger,
Mm-hmm.
but anger makes us feel powerful.
Yes.
And a lot of like loneliness and some of those other emotions make us feel weak and feel sad. And
Mm-hmm.
so it may be common for us as all people, whether we're teens or we're adults, like our kids do this. Like, we get angry because that makes us feel powerful. But then when we ask that question, like, what am I really angry about? That can help us understand the emotion that needs to be dealt with. Like you said, like if we don't deal with it now, we might be triggered other places. And so it's okay if you're triggered when it's like walking down the hall and you see a locker. And
Mm-hmm.
so for us, whenever we were going through grief, like there were some things that we allowed ourselves not to do because we wanted to give ourselves the space to heal. And so, if it's, I'm not going to go by his locker or her locker for a little while, I'm going to give myself space not to, but then processing, like, what is it that I feel? And is there going to be a time when I go back and I allow myself to try these things?
Or asking a friend to go with you the next time that you go.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, and we'll wrap this up, but I think that not putting too much pressure on yourself that you have to feel a certain way to be okay.
Yeah.
I think that's what it comes down to, because there's so much pressure with it.
Yeah, I hope you didn't feel like you had to wrap it up. That's so good, and it's so good for our.
I just did. I want to be able to get to your next thing if you needed to. But
well, I would a little bit of a follow up on. I mean, that's just so good. So I really appreciate you speaking into our community that listens in. And so what I wanted to ask was if there was any like tangible, like you could do this now specifically amidst COVID and what's going on in California, which is where most of our listeners are listening in. I mean, the governor released something yesterday with stricter quarantine, stay home orders. So it's not students, who might be grieving and wanting to be with people. It's significantly harder to find that space and to make that happen. It feels harder to connect through a screen than in person, obviously. And so I would love to hear if you have any practical, like, hey, here's some practical things you can do right now that can help you through the grieving and loss process. Because like Dan said, I think everyone is grieving. We have this specific situation with the suicide that's this heightened, very targeted, hard grief and loss. But outside of that, everyone has lost something. And even as you're looking at the holidays, you've lost what your holidays normally look like. And so there's a grieving process there. And I would love to hear from you if there's some practical hands-on, like, hey, do this now. And these are steps that can help set yourself up to for success through that grieving process or whatever. I don't want to make it sound like grief has success, but hopefully that question makes sense.
No, that's good. And the thing is, nobody knows exactly what you're feeling better than you do. So the first step that we take people through when we're dealing with grief is we have them to name what they're grieving. So it can be easy to say that I'm upset, that I'm sad. But if I say that I'm sad that I don't get to see my brother anymore, if I say it that way, if I say it specifically, then that helps me to process, what do I need to do to remember my brother? So if you're grieving something that's been going on in 2020, it's like, I'm grieving not being able to hang out with these 3 friends on Friday and Saturday night. That's what it is. And really going there and thinking about specifically what it is that you're missing out on can help guide you in figuring out, what do I need to do to still gain some of that connection that I need?
Yeah, because we all have needs and we're trying to meet them. And so asking ourselves that question will help us kind of get to those needs. And we always have multiple ways of meeting our needs. It's not always, except for like hunger and thirst, some of the basic, like our emotional needs. We can look to unhealthy coping, or we can look to healthy coping.
Absolutely.
And so asking that question can be good. And so one thing I realized this week, and maybe it's really simple, but hugs matter more in 2020 than they ever have, right? And so we want people to hug. That doesn't mean you hug everybody.
Don't go hugging strangers. High school students, don't just hug random people right now. Okay.
But hug your mom and dad. Like, they need your hug. Hug your siblings. Hug your best friend. Like, the one person, like,
hug the people you can hug.
Yeah. My 4-year-old or 5-year-old, I think she's 5. Yes, she's 5. She walks around. I don't know if she just heard it in kindergarten the other day or what, but she walks around singing 4 hugs a day. That's the minimum, 4 hugs a day. So I've actually been trying to hit that minimum. I've been nailing it.
That's good.
That's good.
But it's so much more important than ever, because when you are, you're deprived of physical touch, then, I mean, even newborn babies, that they will have people come into NICUs and hold them if their parents have to work, and they will do neonatal massages, because babies will die if they're more likely to die if they don't get that physical touch. And so, I would say, if we're grieving, and we all are, but like, make sure that we aren't just isolating and then allowing that kind of to dip down into depression without calling out to our support system. So whatever that looks like to you, and even if it is fewer because of state mandates, to say, I'm going to have my 3 people who I'm going to text every day, and we're going to see each other. And so, we can still connect, even if, it's only with a few. But we do have our virtual, so if people are interested in like going through a grief program, that we're not the only ones that have grief programs, but it is, something that the online nature of getting mental health, help is growing, but it is a newer platform. And so I would say you can get mental health help via, Zoom sessions online, but also, via the grief programs and, other programs around the world.
And the way that the world has been, you just keep hearing about everything gets shut down, everything's going backwards. And that does not foster an environment of creativity and thinking outside the box very often. So if you hear all the time about, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this, it can make it seem like you can't do anything, but that's not true. You still have options of things that you can do. If you can't go and hang out at people's house the exact same kind of way, brainstorm what it is that you can do, and like naming what it is that you're missing out on, and then thinking about creatively, how can I still get that need met?
Yeah.
You still have like some wherewithal, some creativity, some energy, that you're stronger than you probably think that you are, and you have more creativity than you probably think that you have, and you have more people who support you than you think support you. If you will just dig in and reach out to some of those people, have those conversations, and brainstorm, what is it that I'm going to do to meet these needs? Because, it's really important. It matters. It matters whether or not you put that effort in.
Yeah, last sort of like closing, I don't know if this is like a closing thought that I'd be curious to hear from you, or I don't know if I even have a question formed yet, but Dan and I talk often about this idea.
This is called doing a hard thing, Travis.
Yeah, I'm gonna step into it. I might fail, but I've been told that that's okay. So thanks. But this idea, Dan and I talk often about this idea of making an impact and influence, and having an influence in whatever sphere you're a part of. That you have a sphere of influence.
Love it.
I guess what I'd love to hear from you is just some thoughts on like how self-care is important in order to have that impact.
Yeah, we've all heard
Absolutely.
that oxygen mask thing. You take care of yourself, put the oxygen mask on you so you can help others if you're on an airplane, right? But that's, what we see self-care. You take care of yourself so that you're healthy enough to take care of other people, because we're not strong enough to take care of others if we haven't done the workout ahead of time, if we haven't trained.
Yeah.
And so self-care is going to equip us to be able to help others for sure and make that bigger impact.
And if you do very much to try to help other people, you realize that it can be draining.
For sure.
So if you don't study, you don't read, you don't take time to yourself, you don't go for a walk, you don't process, you don't try to get enough sleep. Students, get enough sleep. It matters, okay? Because you don't make as good of choices, as wise of decisions when you haven't had as much sleep. So taking care of yourself, not just because it's not selfish to take care of yourself, it's selfish to not, and then you can't help other people as well. Mm-hmm. So do what you need to do. Drink enough water, get enough sleep, go on walks, get outside as much as you possibly can. Drink water. Yep, got a good example there. And you have to do it. And I think that especially people who are focused on helping others, they almost seem like it's wrong to do something for themselves. And it's not.
That's great. I was impressed how we got from that intro statement question to actionable items. I think that no, I'm not Travis. I'm not making fun of you. You did great.
Yeah, thank you. I didn't hear that as you making fun of me.
Okay, good.
That's weird that you thought that he might have. Yeah.
No, it's been interesting just talking to students in this time period in particular about. I do try and ask like what have been some of the benefits of remote, and one of the things I have heard is they've been able to sleep more. That because class starts a little bit later, they're not having to leave their home, so. But all those other things you said, I think are just so important. Such like common sense, things that you think would be common sense that we all regularly neglect. And so I think it's important to just be reminded of that. We like to end our podcast with a little segment we call One Question That Matters and Some Questions That Don't Matter. Our question that matters is, what does leadership mean to you? But before we get to that, here are some questions that don't matter. First question that doesn't matter. It technically matters. We like next year we're gonna rebrand this segment because these are all like good questions about you, so they matter. You know I promise.
You know what? They all matter to me right now. So I am tuned in. I am listening. I am going to give the best answer that I can possibly give. This is going to be the
so
best
excited.
Answer for this section that you've ever had.
I believe it. I believe it.
All right.
I have no doubt. Your bio online says that you have 3 boys, enjoy hiking, mountain biking, and family dance parties. What is your favorite song to have a family dance party to?
Wow.
My not favorite is Baby Shark, because that's what we dance to.
Terrible.
Oh, I know, right?
Church clap.
All right. Perfect.
That's nice.
Boys like that.
Okay, so not to timestamp this recording too much, but what's your favorite family Christmas tradition that you're looking forward to?
Yeah.
I'm very looking forward to watching Polar Express.
Yeah. We try to watch a few Christmas movies every year, and we're getting tired of the ones we own and then whatever's on Netflix.
No. I'm not getting tired of Polar Express. I am ready for Polar Express right now. We'll watch it now. Yeah. Right now.
We talked about marriage and why it's so important, and we want to know what the best date night you guys have ever had is. And before we do that, I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to give you a second to think, but then I'm going to count to 3, and you have to both say it at the same time. We're going to see if we line up. 1, 2, 3.
Racquetball.
Woo!
Whoa! That was awesome.
Did you write a note? Was there a note somewhere?
No,
that was impressive.
That was our first date. We always liked doing stuff together. So first date was playing racquetball at the rec center at Lee University where we met, and she worked there. And then other dates looked like going on hikes, playing Frisbee. Like, we've always wanted to do things.
Yeah.
So,
but
yep.
I didn't think he was going to say it because we...
Don't doubt me.
It was a day date where we went and we played racquetball in the middle of the day because we don't have racquetball really. I mean, there's a couple places around here that we've been able to finagle it, but it's down in Tennessee they had it. So, yeah, that was one of our favorites.
Nailed it.
Wow, that was so impressive. Okay, 3 boys. If you had a girl, what would her name have been?
We had... What? McKaylee, that was one of the names.
McKaylee was one of the names that we had.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, finally, the question that does matter. What does leadership mean to you?
And I think leadership's relationships, because that's what it is. I think about the people who I've had the privilege to lead, and it's been all through relationships. It's been having conversations that aren't necessarily easy. It's been reaching out to them, showing that you care. That's what it is. Leadership's the people who are closest to you and investing in them in quality ways and making sure that you're doing everything that you can to help them succeed, and you want them to feel better and be better after they leave your presence.
Yeah. My favorite leaders who I've followed and have been really good examples. So they've led through their example, but then have gotten their feet dirty. They're there and they have relationship and they're doing the work. They're not just, up at the powerful seat.
Absolutely.
And letting everyone else do the work.
I think that ties back to what you said. You said lead wherever you are. You have influence that's closest to you. You have influence. And if I was going to think about something for teachers and high school students, it's like, man, you have so many touches, relational touches that happen throughout the day. You have influence. You have so much more influence than you probably think that you do. Taking advantage of that and doing everything that you can to just make relationships a little bit better.
I think that's so important, and essentially like backing up your words with actions, I think is something that, as far as a leader goes, there's nothing more important to that. We want to thank you both for being here, and also going back to the beginning of the podcast where we said you're our first guest duo. You both nailed it. You nailed it.
You crushed it. Nice job.
And
duo you've had.
Oh, that's hands down, top one for sure. You are the Polar Express of duos. I do want to say though, sincerely, I think you both did such a good job of giving each other space to talk. Like it felt so equitable and like a true partnership.
Oh, well, thanks.
Thank you. Until you told us to say something at the same time.
Hey, but we said the same word.
Well, thank you. Have a lovely rest of your day and week, and we'll go back to the timestamp. Have a great Christmas and New Year's.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and following up, if there's anything that, honestly, that Ashley or I could do at a distance, or even having a conversation with some of those students who are grieving, because we've worked with students who have had friends and family members they've lost through suicide. So honestly, give you my cell phone number. If there's anything that I can do to help, I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. And for everyone listening, we're going to put all of your information in the show notes and on socials as well, so they can track you down.
Chuck and Ashley, you guys are the best. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
They're so great. I love them.
I do too.
That sounded super inauthentic on both our parts.
Yeah,
but I honestly, they're just impressive people. And from the moment we met them, they were quick to step into just that state of not only like humble vulnerability, but genuine curiosity about who I am, who you were, like what we're about, and how they can like speak into our life and like encourage us. So I was so glad to be able to get them on the show and have them share with us. I'd love to hear, Dan, from you, like what were some of your takeaways from the interview? I know I have a handful of things that I wrote down.
Yeah, I think as far as people whose advice I trust, it's generally going to be people who I feel that I'm perceptive and like I can kind of see through BS, if that makes sense. And when someone's like just spouting off not just like platitudes, but things that I don't feel like they're putting into practice themselves, I have a hard time listening to them, even if it's good advice. It's probably arrogance on my part, but what I appreciated about them is it felt, not only did it felt genuine, but I think just the way they communicated to us and they gave each other space to talk, it's clear that they are putting into practice the type of strategies and communication techniques that are like, it was just natural for them to give the other person space and to just talk candidly, but also to give the other person room. And I also think that the reason I brought that up is like I'm more apt to listen to someone like that and to put that advice into practice because I see them living it out, and I think that really adds to the ethos. And I also really liked that the 3 A's they gave us, the aware, assess, and act. And I think that especially right now with everything going on in the world, like it is really easy to kind of fall into some of those more base emotions like anger or fear. And I really appreciate the idea of aware, like being aware and really trying to pinpoint why I'm feeling a certain way and then assessing it more deeply and then really trying to act. And I don't want to be someone who's controlled by fear. I don't want to be someone who's controlled by anger. And so I think the more I try and put these 3 A's into practice in especially when I'm experiencing like emotion that I'm having difficulty grappling with, I think it's super important. So yeah, I really appreciated them. I think they established ethos really easily. Like I'm like, yeah, I believe you.
When you were talking about the aware component, what really stood out for me about that concept was that idea of being really present. So it's not being future focused and having that anxiety of like what's to come, and it's not even being past focused and dealing with like regret or frustration or whatever's in the past. But it's like take a self-assessment of right where you are right now and be aware of what's coming up for you. Like, where do you feel it? What are you thinking? What are your thoughts revolving around? And in being able to make yourself present in the moment, that allows you to then assess and act. And so such great advice for them to share with us today. And with what's going on in the world, the holidays, but beyond, right? Like at any moment you can implement those 3 A's wherever you are to put that into practice. For me, one other aspect that really stood out was that idea of when she was talking about not wanting her grief to end with just grief, but that she wanted her grief to have a purpose and move forward to be able to help others. And when we talk about this idea of impact where you are and how you can take your story with whatever has happened in your life or is going on in your life, and then use that to focus outward and make an impact in someone else's life, that's where you really start seeing that impact that goes beyond just fleeting into lasting impact and legacy. So I'm excited to go through some of their curriculum. I'm stoked about that Do Hard Things curriculum that's free right now on their website, and to go through that. I actually think it would be a great time with the upcoming break to be able to go through that. But I'm super thankful that they were able to take the time for us today. So to everyone listening in, we hope that you enjoyed the interview. And again, thank you to Chuck and Ashley for
Ashley, the fourth A.
Ashley, the fourth A, and all the wisdom that she and Chuck shared with us. We've linked their website and resources with their contact information in our show notes, so make sure you check it out.
And also, as always, be sure to check out more content and leadership resources on our website, matterleadership.com. 1, 2, 3,
Come!
1, 2, 3, racquetball. Dang it.
Racquetball.